3 spine-chilling true stories revealed, haunted secrets and sinister encounters exposed. Karen had always believed their suburban home in Maplewood was a safe haven for her and her 3 children. But as night fell, the air grew thick with an unsettling chill. The TV's hum faded into an eerie silence, the children's giggles turning into whispered questions. Shadows darted at the corners of their vision, sending icy fingers down her spine. Then, the first creak punctured the stillness, disturbingly rhythmic like a heartbeat of something lurking just out of sight. With her husband serving overseas, she pushed aside the creeping dread and focused on dinner, a pot of spaghetti bubbling over on the stove. But each sharp crack of the old house echoed through her, threading anxiety through her routine. As she helped her youngest, Lucy, with her multiplication tables, that creaking noise returned. It was closer now, like a sigh, brushing against her ear. You could almost hear it whispering her name, as if the walls had turned conspiratorial. "Mom, what's that sound?" her oldest, Jake, asked, glancing toward the darkened hallway. Karen's heart raced not because of Jake's question, but the tremor in his voice. She dismissed it as just the house settling, or perhaps a stray cat outside, but deep down, she felt the familiar twinge of panic. The children eventually turned in, the routine of bedtime wrapping them in a fragile cocoon. Karen couldn't shake the feeling of unease, an itch racing along the surface of her skin. As she tucked them in, the atmosphere thickened, and the shadows across the room seemed to stretch, reaching towards her children. Each time she glanced away, she felt an oppressive weight as if something was watching them. What was it? Why now? Goosebumps prickled at her arms as she closed the door, bolting it just for extra measure. That night was unlike any other. The whispers grew more distinct, filling the air like a chilling lullaby calling to her children. They tossed and turned, their little faces twisting with fear, anxiety etched into their features. With each creak of the night, her conviction wavered. This wasn't just an old house, something darker lurked beneath its surface, something waiting for the right moment to strike. Determined to uncover the truth, Karen found herself poring over Maplewood's history. Page after page revealed a tangled web of disappearances tied to a long-beloved mayor, a man with a facade of charm but too many buried secrets. Her neighbors, whose familiar faces greeted her daily, now donned masks of deceit, shadows flickering behind their eyes. Panic settled in her chest as she realized their lives might not be as idyllic as they appeared. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A chilling reality began to solidify. Her children began experiencing the same haunting echoes, doors creaking open when no one was nearby, the curtains swaying without a breeze, hushed tones calling their names in the midnight stillness. That sense of safety that once enshrouded their home began to crumble, revealing a raw, terrifying truth. Each corner of her home felt tainted by the darkness of Maplewood's history. Then came the confrontation. As Karen gathered her children, a darkness materialized in their living room, swirling with the remnants of dread. In that moment, she understood, the malevolence wasn't just outside their home, it was within the very fabric of Maplewood itself. Could they escape this nightmare? The threads that bound their family to the town wove tighter around them, an insistent pull toward an unknown and terrifying fate. What truly lay at the heart of Maplewood's darkness? The air grew heavy as she realized the push toward the truth had begun. Karen's heart thundered in her chest as the darkness coalesced before her, solid yet formless, an embodiment of her worst fears. Her children huddled close, eyes wide with terror, each small body trembling against the encroaching blackness that seemed to pulse with life. In that moment, every instinct told her to flee, yet she stood rooted to the spot, paralyzed by the realization that whatever held sway in their home was not merely a physical menace. "What do you want?" she shouted, desperate for answers, for some clarity in the suffocating ignorance that surrounded them. The silence that followed her question was deafening, thick with anticipation. Then, laughter, a chilling sound that broke the stillness like glass shattering. It was a sound that didn't belong, ricocheting off the walls and sending icy tendrils creeping up her spine. The children clung to her, their small hands finding purchase on her arms, grounding her even as the terror threatened to sweep her away. She turned to them, her voice a hushed whisper filled with urgency. "We need to leave. Now." But the dark presence relented, a coldness curling around their hearts, drawing them back. Shadows danced on the walls, stirring memories of the pages she had read, stories of those who vanished without a trace, swallowed by the town's very spirit. Jake peered into the murky expanse, fear flickering like a candle flame in his eyes. "Mom, I saw something. In the corner. It was moving." Karen's breath hitched. She felt it too, a presence darting just out of sight, an entity aware of them, of their every move. It wasn't just a thing, it was alive, watching, and waiting. "Listen to me, everyone," she said, hoping to calm their ragged breaths. "We have to stick together. We don't." Before she could finish, the lights flickered. The bulbs popped with a harsh crack, plunging the room into darkness. Panic surged through her. It felt as if the shadows were tightening their grip. The kids shrieked, voices piercing the night, and fear flooded her system like ice water. "Stay close," she urged, lunging forward as she felt the oppressive weight of the darkness bearing down. She grabbed their hands, but the chill seeped through her skin and into her bones, freezing her resolve. The atmosphere crackled with malevolence. Suddenly, a whisper slipped through the air, both near and distant, rising above the children's moans. "Leave before it's too late." The voice was raspy, a warning laced with urgency. "Who are you?" she screamed into the abyss, demanding, pleading. The response was an echo of laughter, haunting her with tones that melted into sobs. Fear warred with desperation, and Karen felt the urge to escape, to flee into the night. "Mom!" Lucy whimpered, her grip tightening around Karen's fingers, her small face contorted in confusion. "What is happening?" "I don't know, baby, but we're getting out of here," Karen said, forcing herself to move toward the door. The shadows twisted and swirled, rushing to thwart her escape. Each step felt like wading through quicksand, the chill wrapping around her, binding her in a grip she struggled to break. Then, out of the corner of her eye, something glinted, a sharp flash of silver reflecting the faint light from the moon creeping through the windows. She turned, dread pooling in her stomach. There it was. A small picture frame, one she couldn't recall seeing before, nestled precariously against the wall where her family's photos usually hung. Her heart pounded wildly as she approached. The image inside showed the mayor, arms outstretched, a wide smile plastered across his face, surrounded by children. A family just like hers. But as she stepped closer, the joyful expression twisted into something sinister, shifting under her gaze until it was replaced by a face of despair, pale and hollow. "Mom, don't touch it!" Jake screamed just as she reached for the frame. The moment her fingers brushed the glass, an explosion of sound erupted, the house convulsing around them. The laughter crescendoed into a wail, a furious tempest of voices. They weren't just trapped. They were being summoned. Karen's chest tightened, a fear unlike any she had ever known flooding her. Was it too late to save her family? "Run!" she shouted, pulling her children back into the living room. But as they turned, they saw it, the shadows swirling, forming shapes anew. An army of figures emerged, faces twisted in anguish, reaching out with skeletal hands, desperate and hungry. She fought against the urge to scream, but the darkness around her pulsed, hungry for despair. What horror awaited them? Could they escape the malevolence that called Maplewood home? With each heartbeat, the shadows closed in, ready to envelop them in a dreadful embrace and stimulate what lingered in the history beneath their feet. The air grew thick, electric with dread as Karen pulled her children closer, the shadows swirling like a living thing, each heartbeat echoing with an impending sense of doom. Their gasps mingled, creating a haunting symphony of fear that reverberated off the cold walls. The figures formed into more distinct shapes, all twisted features and hollow eyes, memories trapped within the darkness. Karen felt paralyzed, torn between the urge to flee and the impossible weight pressing down her chest. A stark realization hit her: these weren't just shadows. They were remnants, lost souls trapped in a cycle of torment, seeking something they could never attain. Were they looking for family? For safety? Or for vengeance? "Mom!" Lucy's voice broke her reverie. "What do we do?" Jake tugged at her shirt, terror-stricken. "Please. Just tell us." Forcing her mind to think, she scanned the room. The corners brimmed with shadows, taunting her from the periphery. But toward the back, by the oak cabinet, lay an old, worn book she hadn't noticed before. The spine was cracked, pages yellowed with age. A spark of hope ignited within her. Knowledge, the kind that had saved her in stories before. "Stay right here," Karen said, her voice stronger than she felt as she pushed through the compounding dread. She stumbled toward the book, each step feeling like it could break her resolve. Cold fingers brushed against her arm, tugging her back, urging her to despair. They were not mere shadows anymore, they were alive, whispering secrets that scraped against her sanity. She snatched the book and, flipping it open, words flooded over her like an ice storm. The text described protective incantations, stories of families who once lived in the house, their fates entwined with the darkness. Each tale drew her in, filling her with a sense of urgency. "Mom!" Jake yelled again, and she could hear the terror climbing in his voice like ivy up a crumbling facade. "Just a second," she whispered as she fought the rising tide of panic. She read faster, searching for a glimmer of hope. There. A passage about summoning the light, about calling forth what was rightfully theirs. The shadows roared, their discontent manifesting as shrieks, echoing through the room like tormented banshees. She had to act. "Listen. We can end this," Karen shouted, her voice slicing through the chaos. "We can break the hold they have." She closed her eyes, her mind racing as she recalled the few lines she had read. Rage against the despair. Light against the dark. She felt the familiar moonlight filter through her skin, igniting an ember within her. "We are the light. We belong here." As if in response, the shadows writhed, their forms bubbling with agitation. She could see the faces twisted in anguish, faces she might recognize from obscure memories or disconnected dreams. They were lost, but they wouldn't take her children. Not now. Together. She cast her voice into the void, the book clutched to her chest. "Lucy. Jake. With me. Mom." Jake cried, as he and Lucy pressed against her, gathering their small strength together. The darkness hesitated, trembling like a taut string about to snap. The figures faltered, their reach momentarily loosening, giving them just a heartbeat to react. With one final breath, Karen read the incantation aloud, words tumbling from her lips like a desperate plea. The air shimmered, gold and silver sparks igniting around them, illuminating the remnants that loitered by the edges. But one figure lingered at the forefront, a woman with sunken eyes and a despairing gaze. Her sorrow infused the air, turning the hope into a suffocating weight. "You cannot escape," the voice was sharp, echoing with pain. "You belong to us now." The light flickered, the shadows rearing back, yet the woman's intensity bore down upon them. Suddenly, an anguished scream split the air. Karen's heart leaped as she realized too late, while she called forth the light, the darkness surged. They were not just summoning their ancestors, they were awakening the very heart of the malevolence that dwelled in Maplewood. Would they be able to push it back? Or had they just summoned something far worse? As the room trembled once more in response to the clash of forces, Karen's mind raced with a question that loomed larger than life: would they become the next lost souls entwined in the darkest history of the town? The wall shuddered violently, sending a ripple of fear racing through Karen's body. The shadows twisted and surged like a storm, every flicker of light felt like a retreat from the impending doom. The cry of the figures echoed in her ears, haunting and desperate, as if begging her to relinquish her grip on reality. "Mom, please." Lucy pressed against her, her small body trembling. Jake tightened his hold, and Karen felt as if their fear seeped into her skin, freezing her blood. She had to do something, but what? A swell of darkness poured forward, coiling around her legs like a serpent preparing to strike. The woman with sunken eyes stepped closer, her lips curling into a grin that twisted the features into a grotesque mask. "We wait for you," she whispered, each word scraping against Karen's sanity. Join us forever." "No!" Karen shouted, her voice rising above the cacophony. The shadow shrieked, a chorus of torment shaking the room. "I want to let you take them." In that moment, a flicker of clarity pierced through the haze of fear gripping her mind. The book. She needed to summon the light again. With a trembling hand, she held it up. The words danced before her eyes, an ancient weapon against the darkness. The energy in the room shifted, crackling like a live wire, urging her to act fast. "Stand strong," she cried, pointing the book toward the shadowy figures. "We are not alone. We will break this curse." She could feel the courage swelling within the kids as they pressed closer, forming a fragile wall against the encroaching darkness. But it wasn't just the room that trembled. The very foundation of their reality seemed to warp and bend. The corners of the room darkened, the shadows stretching into elongated figures that twisted like fingers reaching out for her. The cries grew louder, a deafening whirlwind threatening to rip them apart, and Karen gritted her teeth against the suffocating force pressing in around them. In a swift motion, she opened the book again and began chanting the incantation, her voice ringing with determination. With each syllable, light sparked around them, pushing against the shadows that lashed at her like whipcords. "Fight!" she urged, feeling the flicker of hope ignite in the air. "We belong here. We are the light." But the woman was undeterred, her eyes glinting with a malevolence that made Karen's heart race. "You think you can banish us?" she sneered, as if drawing strength from the chaos. "We are the echoes of this place, bound to it. You will not leave." Suddenly, darkness lashed out, striking Jake across the chest, sending him sprawling. "Jake!" Karen screamed, her heart plunging. Panic surged through her like a tidal wave. As she rushed to him, the shadows closed in tighter, smothering them in a damp, drawn-out breath of despair. Fury coursed through her when she saw him lying there, fear etched across his face. The echoes swelled around her lost souls grasping, crying, wanting all blurring into a single entity, a writhing beast feeding on their terror. "Lucy, help me!" Karen shouted, their bond the only thing keeping the shadows at bay. Lucy knelt beside Jake, and they formed a barrier of united will against the collapsing darkness. The incantations rang from their lips, but the shadows twisted the words into chaotic reverberations. With every chant, the light flickered momentarily. Could their collective will be enough? Just then, the wall cracked, a flash splitting the darkness like a lightning bolt. Shadows recoiled, hissing in betrayal as they struggled against an awakening force. But something stirred, deep in the shadows. The woman grinned, her hollow smile widening. "You are too late." From the depths, a low growl escaped the edge of the darkness, a sound twisted with unearthly malice. And all of a sudden, a shadowy claw shot out, aiming straight for Karen, the embodiment of everything she feared most. Terror seized her heart, but she pushed against it, clutching the book. Just as she prepared for a last-ditch effort, she caught sight of something impossible, a swirling glyph above them, glowing faintly in the suffocating murk. What was it? Part of the incantation? A key? There was no time left to think. Would they break free, or fall forever into the maw of despair? The shadow shrieked, and Karen could only hold her breath as she faced the unknown. The battle for their lives was about to take a turn, but toward what fate? The claw shot forward, piercing the air with a visceral speed that made Karen's heart pound in her throat. Instinctively, she ducked, pulling Lucy tightly against her as inches away. The claw slammed into the wall, splintering it like fragile glass. Dust and debris rained down, mixing with the cold, damp air, the sour scent of decay growing stronger. "Stand back!" she shouted, urgency tearing through her like an electric current. The glyph pulsed, its shimmering edges beckoning her, glowing with an eerie light that pushed back the shadows even as they shrieked with fury. It seemed to recognize her fear, but also her resolve. There was power in fear, a twisted energy that could either consume or empower. "I can't," Jake gasped from the floor, scrambling to sit up, his face pale. "They're too strong, Mom." "No!" she snapped. "We have to believe." Her voice quivered, but she forced the conviction into her words. The book vibrated in her hands, its spine warm, as if it was alive, responding to her desperation. The shadows reacted violently, twisting and coiling around her legs, squeezing tighter, like icy fingers choking the breath from her lungs. The woman with sunken eyes laughed, her voice slithering through the air like smoke. "You are merely delaying the inevitable, Karen. Join us, find peace in the darkness." The promise of escape from pain crashed like a wave against her. She could feel her resolve wavering, the shadows whispering secrets that tugged at her thoughts, pleading for her to relent. "Don't listen!" Lucy screamed, clutching Karen's arm, her little voice shrill with fear. "Fight, Mom. Please." The innocence in Lucy's plea pulled Karen back from the brink, a lifeline in the tumultuous sea of despair. With every ounce of strength left, Karen raised the book higher, its pages fluttering wildly as if caught in an unseen wind. "By the light of the lost, I command you," she shouted, the words surging out like a torrent, fierce and defiant. Suddenly, the shadows recoiled, whooshing back as if stung. The glyph pulsed brighter, illuminating the suffocating darkness, pushing it away as though they were made of nothing more than smoke. Twisting tendrils shrank back, howling in defeat. But the woman wasn't finished. Her grin faded into a scowl, rage boiling behind her hollow eyes. "You cannot fight your destiny. You belong to us." The ground shook again, and the air thickened, turning suffocatingly dense. Dark figures began to claw their way forward, emerging from the very walls, the memories and anguish of the lost flooding the space twisted between the living and the dead. They were shadows of despair itself, pallid faces twisted in agony, their mouths opening in silent screams. "Now!" Karen screamed, summoning every bit of power within her. "Chant with me." Lucy and Jake leaned in, their voices trembling, joining in her desperate incantation. The shadows hissed, trying to drown them out, but each word they spoke turned into a bright ember, flaring against the blanket of darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. As the final words left their lips, a shockwave exploded from the glyph, radiating warmth like a sunrise cutting through a long night. The dark figures froze, momentarily incapacitated by the brilliance, their screams morphing into a cacophony of fury, but then, at the edge of that glowing circle, a presence stirred. A new darkness thickened at the edges, creeping like a shadowy serpent waiting to strike. "What is that?" Jake whispered, his eyes wide with terror. Karen's heart sank. A larger silhouette emerged, more defined, more tangible than the rest, the true source of their torment. "The shadows are just a veil," the woman sneered, her voice dripping with venom. "What lives behind them is far worse." Her laugh echoed, a haunting melody that reverberated through their bones. Panic surged as the reality of their situation sank in. The real fight was just beginning. Would they face this dread or would they succumb to it? As the light flickered, shadows writhed, and an unexpected chill swept through the room. A dark presence loomed, ready to unveil its full power. Karen's grip tightened on the book. This was only the beginning, a nightmare waiting to unfold. What awaited them next? Would the light merely expose them to greater horrors? The air thickened as the darkness coiled closer, like an enormous serpent tightening around its prey. Karen could feel the cold creep into her bones, the shadows practically seeping into her skin. She shivered, and in that split second of fear, the woman's form solidified, expanding ominously beyond the circle of light they fought to maintain. "Do you think your little spells protect you?" The woman's voice swirled around them like mist, each word carrying the weight of despair. Karen's throat felt tight. She gripped the book harder, knuckles white, as anxiety clamored within her chest. "Keep chanting," she shouted, her heart racing. Jake and Lucy continued to murmur the incantation, but their voices were faltering now, breaking apart like brittle leaves in winter. Karen felt their hope waning, and her stomach twisted. The larger figure stepped forward, a looming shadow with no discernible features, as if everything it touched turned to darkness. It advanced slowly, relentlessly, exuding an unholy energy that prickled Karen's skin. The shadows before it writhed like a living thing, eager for the chaos to come. "What are you doing?" Jake stammered, his eyes wide and unblinking as he caught sight of the entity closing in. Fear radiated from him, urging Karen to act. "We have to hold on," Karen shouted back, her voice cracking under pressure. "Focus on the light. Focus." The glyph's glow flickered, but the shadows pressed harder, pulsating, hungry. Suddenly, a memory flashed in Karen's mind, a moment from her youth, a story her grandmother used to tell. About a father who had abandoned a child in the woods, leaving it to the whispers of the shadows. She grasped for it, anything to keep her grounded. She pushed forward, her voice growing even louder. "By the light of the lost, we command this darkness. You will not take us." The larger figure paused, its shape flickering as if the words had hit it. For a heartbeat, it seemed as though the entity staggered. But then, its mouth twisted horrifically into a grin, showing rows of sharpened teeth gleaming with a sinister allure. "Light? You think your light is powerful?" It elongated, spilling over into the remaining illumination, swallowing it with ease. The shadow snickered, a sound like stones grinding together. Terror swept through Karen as she stumbled back, finding Lucy's small hand still clutching hers, squeezing tightly. "Mom! Please!" Lucy cried, her voice thick with dread. Karen's mind raced. Fuel came from the fear, from the love of her children. She felt a surge of defiance. "We're not afraid," she yelled, forcing the shadows to back off. The entity roared in response, a sound that ripped through the chilling air, cold and cruel. Without hesitation, it surged forward, slamming into the barrier of light. The glyph flared, vibrant, but the force of the shadow battered at it, determined to break through. "No!" Her voice broke as she instinctively pulled Lucy and Jake closer, feeling the heat radiating off the glyph fading under the pressure. "We can't let it win." With a wild shout, she threw her arms out wide, pouring her heart into the incantation, pouring their shared anguish, their love for one another into the air. "This is our fight. You cannot take us." The shadows recoiled, though more agitated than wounded. They twisted in a frenzy, searching for an opening, as if sensing her vulnerability. "You're only prolonging the inevitable, Karen," the woman hissed, heat and cold swirling together. But then, lurking within the chaos, something else stirred. A whisper of clarity. A flicker of something familiar. What was it? Karen halted her breath. Behind the entity, she swore she saw glimpses of faces, loved ones, lost friends. The lost souls of those entwined in this dark web, hovering like echoes caught between realms. Her breath quickened. It was a chance obscured among shadows, the very essence of hope entwined within despair. "Focus on the light," she reiterated to her children, knowing that the revelation was their only weapon. But could they harness it before it was too late? As the shadows danced erratically, their fangs glinting in that flickering light, Karen felt a new fear creeping in. What if the glyph didn't hold? What if they were just bait for something far worse waiting in the wings, eager to swallow them all whole? The answer felt closer than she anticipated, a puzzle missing a piece. Could she find it before the last light diminished? The stakes were higher than ever, and answers hung tantalizingly close yet shrouded in darkness. In that moment of confrontation, the reality dawned upon her. What if the family wasn't merely protecting themselves but reclaiming every lost soul trapped beneath the suffocating weight of shadow? What if the fight wasn't just for their survival but for the salvation of all? The shadows tightened their coil, creeping ever closer, their edges becoming jagged and threatening. Karen's heart thundered in her chest as the light of the glyph pulsated weakly against the encroaching darkness. "We can't give in," she urged, desperately remaining hopeful. Her children echoed her sentiments, but she could tell fear gripped them too. "Mom, what happens if it breaks through?" Lucy asked, her small voice quivering, eyes big and wide with dread. "Then we'll fight harder," Karen shouted, a false confidence barely masking her own terror. She felt the glyph flicker beneath their feet, as if sensing its own impending doom. The monstrous figure twisted, contorting into something grotesque, engulfing all semblance of humanity. It fed off the anguish that hung thick in the air, drawing strength from it. "Your hopelessness nourishes me," it taunted, laughing like a chilling wind through dead branches. Jake looked up at her, eyes pleading. "What do we do?" Karen felt the grip of fear close around her like a noose. "We remember who we are. We're stronger together." She took a deep breath, centering herself for what lay ahead, but doubt gnawed at the edges of her courage. She could sense the shadows preparing for a final assault, a final push to extinguish the last light within them. "Say the names," she urged her children, channeling the memory of their loved ones, faces flickering to life in the shadows behind the apparition. "Remember Grandma. Remember Dad." Faces from her past emerged stronger now, igniting their resolve. "Michael. Sarah. You're with us," Jake cried, breaking the desperation with a note of determination that surprised even him. Each name echoed, swirling into the dark like embers. The shadows shrieked, thrashing violently as if caught in a tempest. The barrier fluttered defiantly, yet everyone could sense its fragility. The woman in the shadows seethed, her laughter turning to a howl of rage. "You dare to call upon them? They belong to the darkness now." "No. They're not yours," Karen cried, her voice a weapon forged from love and determination. "We are reclaiming them." With each name spoken, the dark specters pulsated in response, revealing glimpses of their captives in the flickering light, faces of fear, of pain. "Mom, I see them. They need help," Lucy shouted, pointing. Karen's eyes darted to focus beyond the entity. She could barely make out the outlines, a sea of anguished souls, their cries echoing through the thick air. "Keep going. Conjure them up," Karen commanded, emboldened by the urgency of the moment. "We will not let you consume us." The glyph surged, glowing fiercely against the shadows. But desperation clawed at her insides. As the walls of light began to crack, she realized she was holding the key, the missing piece. "We must release them. Together." Memories flooded her mind, each recollection swirling with potent energy, the laughter of childhood, the warmth of family, the bittersweet moments. She gathered it all in her heart and shouted with everything she had, "We free you. We release you from this burden. Come back to us." The shadows recoiled, a scream echoing into the night, a terrifying blend of rage and fear. But their voices began to harmonize with her plea, turning to whispers as they congealed into a powerful song of hope. But then, amid the rising tide of light, an infernal roar shattered the air, piercing her resolve. "Foolish mortals! You cannot save them. They are mine." The entity lunged forward, shattering the barrier as if it were made of glass. Then, in an instant, everything went dark. Karen's heart dropped as panic set in. The screams of her children were drowned in an encroaching silence. She felt the gnawing dread of nothingness rushing in, a void that the light could not fend off forever. "Lucy! Jake!" She cried out, but no response came. The darkness strangled her voice, choking the air from her lungs. "Wait, what was that?" A flicker in the dark? A promise of light just beyond the horizon? What if, in the face of overwhelming shadows, the answer lay not in resistance, but in embracing the very horror that sought to consume them? Would they dare to ally with the depths from where hope still flickered? The darkness pressed in, thick as fog, heavy enough to smother her breath. Karen clawed at it, grasping for the flicker she had sensed moments ago. Was it a trick of her mind, a beacon, or just her desperate hope trying to ignite a spark? Lucy! Jake! She screamed again, her voice swallowed whole by undefined shadows. It felt like she was standing in the eye of a storm, where the stillness was only the calm before the chaos. Each heartbeat echoed in her ears, frantic and loud, then came a whisper, barely discernible, insidious and intimate. They don't want you, they want to be free. The voice slithered around her, and the dread transformed into a chilling recognition. With every second that passed, the shadows thickened. She knew that embracing the darkness would be surrender, but if it meant saving her children, she would do anything. She hesitated, the weight of resistance heavy on her shoulders. Is that true? She wondered aloud, casting her thoughts into the ink. Do they really want this? Join us, murmured the voice again, more confidently, laced with glee. We are the escape. We are the release. Together, you said remember who we are, she muttered to herself, fighting the encroaching despair. But the whisper danced in her mind, taunting her resolve. What if you held the key to their freedom? What if the darkness you fear is a part of you? The glyph flickered weakly beneath her. Its pulse felt like a failing heart, and she could sense its waning power. The thought of surrendering, to give in to that menacing offer, burgeoned within her heart. What if shedding light meant consuming darkness? Speak their names again, the voice urged, a chilling lilt dragging through the word. And there it was, the flicker once knowing them. Embrace them, Karen. They await your call. Time slowed, a web of fear and desperation wrapping around her thoughts. With every beat, she hesitated, balancing on the edge of her choices. Mom! A voice, fragile yet strong, pierced through the void. It was Jake. I'm here. Lucy. Where are you? She screamed, her voice breaking. There was more now, faint murmurs, the sounds of her children's movements, struggling against something unseen. Mom, we're scared. Lucy's small voice quivered, tinged with a raw panic. Help us. I'm coming. Karen's heart surged, a jolt of adrenaline breaking through her fear. Their voices ignited the thin thread of hope. She flung her weight against the darkness, arms outstretched. I will save you. In the depths of despair, her memories swirled, kind laughter, soft hugs, warm evenings shared together. The remnants of joy snapped into focus, clarity beaming back at her like a lighthouse. This was what she fought for. With a fierce determination, she shouted, "Come back. I summon you. Come back to us." Bright light erupted, illuminating the oppressive shadows as her words transformed into a mantra, gathering energy with each repetition. The shadows writhed, contorting against the brilliance of her love, anger piercing through their depths. No! 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 The malevolent voice shrieked, shrill and reverberating with fury. The entity lunged, shapes writhing, grasping at the light. Karen felt her heart race, desperate to shield her children. Hold on to each other. Hold on to me. She cried, pulling them in close. Suddenly a warm, radiant glow enveloped them, igniting the suffocating darkness. Faces began to emerge, luminous and liberated, breaking free of their torment within the shadows. But then came a chilling realization: the light was thin, wavering. She could feel the darkness clawing at its edges, eager to reclaim what it lost. Just as it seemed the battle was turning, Karen knew they weren't safe yet. What if it wasn't just about fighting? The voice of malice resurfacing within her thoughts. What if joining the shadows was the real escape? The spectral whisper tickled at the edges of her resolve, cold as death. And as the light flickered perilously, uncertainty gripped her. Would she really dare to listen? Would she step into the abyss to save her family? Could betraying the light grant them the freedom they so desperately sought? Go to them. The voice hissed, pulling at the seams of her sanity. It twisted like a knife, writhing in her mind. The shadows whispered sweetly, curling around her heart. Karen fought against the pull, but it was intoxicating, seductive. What if joining them meant safety for Lucy and Jake? Her heartbeat thundered in rhythm with the flickering light, an echo of her growing dilemma. Join them, Karen. It was no longer just a voice, but a chorus of tormented souls mingling with her thoughts. Be free. With each breath, the light flickered, the warmth dissolving into icy tendrils that slithered over her skin. Her once bright memories of laughter and love began to dim, replaced by dark and sinister visions. She saw Jake and Lucy, their faces pale, distorted by fear, eyes wide and pleading, reaching for her through the shadowy void. Mom! Jake's voice trembled, filled with despair. We need you. Don't leave us. Her heart ached, a painful, drawn-out pulse that reverberated in the hollow chamber of her chest. She couldn't abandon them, not now, not ever. But the relentless whispers penetrated deeper into her psyche. You could end their suffering. Just step into the dark, let them go. No! Karen screamed, the word ripping from her throat. She steadied herself, gathering her resolve like a fragile thread, thin yet unbreakable. I want to do it. We're stronger together. But as she clung to her light, she perceived something in the darkness, an intense, swirling presence that pulsed with a life of its own. The shadows shifted, coalescing into a grotesque figure, an amalgamation of faces twisted in anguish. They reached for her, their mouths forming silent screams, eyes soaked in sorrow. Help us, they implored, their voices layered, a ghastly harmony that chilled Karen to the core. Leave this world behind, be united in the dark. She shook her head violently, tearing her gaze away from the despondent faces. No. I refuse. But as the words fell from her lips, doubt seeped in, wrapping itself around her heart. Could she resist the allure of their freedom? Then the light surged and pulsed, flickering in a bright heartbeat, pushing the grotesque figures back. But it was weakening, her power slowly slipping like sand through her desperate fingers. The weight of the darkness pressed harder, heavy and suffocating. Together. She howled, focusing all her energy. Jake! Lucy! Call for me. Mom, we're here. Please. They cried, desperation bubbling within each syllable, drawing from the last remnants of her strength. She poured her love into the light, channeling every memory, every hope. The glow brightened, bursting through the shadows like a beacon. The wailing souls recoiled, hissing and retreating into the ink, but the light continued to flicker and flicker. It was a gamble. And then, the world trembled around her. The darkness erupted into chaos, roaring with anger and disappointment. You think you can resist? It seethed, and she felt its breath, cold and damp on her neck. You will lose them, Karen. They will stay lost forever. She trembled as dread clawed at her, but she pushed back, refusing to give way to despair. I will find them. I will bring you back. The glow steadied again, but shadows curled around her ankles, latching on like deadly leeches. It was now or never. With unyielding fury, she screamed, I'm coming for you. In an instant, the shadows lunged, the light and dark spiraling in a deafening crash, battling fiercely. Everything shattered around her, the space collapsing into itself as she leaped forward, her heart pounding, mind consumed with fear for her children. But then a sickening silence followed. She opened her eyes to an unfamiliar darkness, breath caught in her throat, heartbeat a frantic rhythm. The world around her shifted. Mom? Lucy's voice echoed far away, just a whisper, mere inches beyond her grasp. Jake? She cried, desperate. But it was only shadows that replied, mocking her anguish in the cold silence. Had she emerged alone? Had her sacrifice meant anything? The question hung heavy in the air, lingering like a death knell. Then came a shuddering echo that wormed its way into her thoughts. Why fight alone, when you could follow the darkness? They will only be free with you. Karen felt the oppressive weight of the shadows close in once more. She stood on the precipice, ready to step forward into the void. But was there still hope, or was it already too late? The shadows now loomed massive around Karen, an endless expanse of darkness promising solace, but their true intention was to devour her. Panic gripped her throat, squeezing out every breath as she fought the encroaching despair. She could feel Lucy and Jake's presence slipping further away, like wisps of smoke losing their shape. But her heart blazed with one fierce thought: I will not give up on you. Jake! Lucy! She screamed, each syllable ripping through the heavy silence. I'm coming. In her mind, she imagined them reaching for her. The thought ignited something deep within. Memories flooded her senses, their laughter, the warmth of family dinners, soft touches, endless hugs. Each memory became a weapon, forging a shield against the darkness threatening to consume them. The specters twisted in outrage, and from the depths, the cruel voice returned. You cannot win, child. You belong to the shadows now. No! Karen shouted louder, forcing herself to summon every ounce of strength. We are the light. I choose my family. The glyph pulsed weakly beneath her, flickering once, then twice. With each flicker, the connection between her and the shadows crackled, drawing the darkness closer, but she held firm. She wouldn't give in. Lucy! Jake! Call for me! She urged, still feeling the warmth of their love in the depths of her heart. Mom! We're scared. Came Lucy's voice, fragile but clear, piercing through the darkness with the strength of their bond. Each word stoked Karen's resolve as she concentrated on the warmth pooling in her chest. She closed her eyes, envisioning their faces together, and concentrated. We belong together, she proclaimed, channeling their love like a beacon. We will break this curse. The shadows recoiled threateningly, but her voice rose above the cacophony like thunder. You need our light to exist. And here, we will shine. With a deep breath, she plunged into the depths of her fears, weaving those memories into her voice like an incantation, each name a lifeline. Alice. Grandpa. So many lost. We free you. Come back to us. Every name struck like a hammer, and the shadows writhed in realization they were being called forth. Faces began to emerge, their anguish easing into calm as the unity of love charged through Karen's veins. Hope lit up the corners of the darkness, illuminating the way forward. No! No! What are you doing? The malevolent voice screeched, desperation curling around the words. The dark entity thrashed violently, coiling around her like a giant serpent, but she ignored it. She had them. They were coming back. The flickers of light surged as the shadows thinned, revealing the outlines of her children, their silhouettes outlined by the growing glow that flourished in the room. Mom! Mom, where are you? I'm here. She gasped, heart racing as she lunged toward where she could feel their energy pulsing, desperately trying to close the distance. Hold on to the light, hold on to each other. With every name she cried, hope shattered through the darkness, the sounds of laughter and love reverberating around them. Every stifled breath, every flicker of hope pushed back against the encroaching despair, igniting the hearts of the lost. Bound by fear and love, the family surged forward, hearts pounding in unity. In that moment, they were together, a force against the shadows that had once tried to tear them apart. The shadows dissipated, shrieking as the light swallowed them whole. The darkness howled as they dove within it together, faces emerging from the void, lost loved ones tumbling forth, freed by the bonds of love and the promise of unity. Together! She shouted, and they surged as one, an incandescent explosion piercing through the murk, scattering the suffocating darkness, trapping the shadows in screams of ultimate defeat, and then came quiet, a profound stillness, washing over her like sunlight after a storm. "Mom?" Lucy whispered, the sweetness of her voice breaking the silence, sending warmth flooding through Karen all over again. Karen collapsed down onto her knees, the weight of everything rushing away. She gathered her children into her arms, tight against her chest, their little heartbeats syncing with hers. "We're home," Karen whispered, feeling tears mingle with joy. The shadows shimmered like mist in the early dawn, fading from existence, leaving behind echoes of hearts once bound in despair. In their place, a tranquil warmth enveloped their home, each corner alive with the spirit of those they had saved, standing as a reminder of resilience and hope. "We did it, we faced the darkness and we won," Karen murmured, kissing each of her children. With the darkness banished, Maplewood whispered her own secret, a history of joy, laughter, and love at its heart, finally freed. The night history once held captive had been rewritten by the threads of family, pulling them forward into a brighter tomorrow. With the dawn creeping in, a new chapter awaited them, one filled with light and perhaps a little less fear. This was their farewell to the shadows, a promise they would carry with them always, but this was just their story. They stood as a testament, a call for anyone lost in their own darkness. Never forget the light you hold within, and always remember that love binds us, and together, we are unstoppable. So what are you waiting for? Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support the channel because only true fans understand the importance of standing together.